He stood at the top of the stairs and looked down. He had a choice: walk down the steps and spend another miserable day at school, or he could fall down these stairs and not have to go in. Could he do it? He stood staring for a few minutes. His heart was racing. He could feel the blood pumping in his veins. This was it. He had been holding his breath, but he exhaled and took a step forward. James is one of thousands of teenagers who every single day are looking for ways out of dealing with the stress in their lives. In this video, I will be giving you 3 long-term strategies that your teenager can use to cope with stress. These are proven strategies that work. This is the 3rd video of our series on stress. You can find the links for the previous 2 videos in the description below. It is worth watching the videos in order to have the maximum impact on your teenager. Stress is a process which has mental and physical impacts. In extreme cases, not being able to cope with stress leads to the tragic loss of life. That makes coping with stress perhaps the most important thing we can teach our teenagers. It will literally save lives. Stress is caused by an imbalance between demands placed on a teenager and their perceived ability to manage their stress. That means that there is a physical and mental element to the stress. It has been proven that perception has an impact on the body's response to a stressful situation. So thoughts literally influence hormone production within your body. So, for the sake of argument, imagine 2 teenagers who live exactly the same lives, in every single way possible. One views his life as stressful because he believes he doesn't have it in him to cope. His body will be producing cortisol, the stress hormone, regularly. This, in the long term, has a dangerous impact on the brain and the body. What about the other teenager? He isn't fazed by life at all. He believes he has everything under control. When he is faced with a difficult situation, he sees it as a challenge. He is motivated to overcome it. The body doesn't produce cortisol to the same levels in his situation. So perception has a huge impact on the outcomes of a stressful situation. There are 2 ways this can be dealt with. The perception of the demands on a teenager need to be reduced. This can be done by putting everything into context. For example, a teenager's mind makes situations seem a lot worse than they are. This includes friendships, this includes relationships, and this includes schoolwork. A maths course can seem like Mount Everest, but when you show a teenager the actual course content, they realise it's not as endless as they thought, and suddenly their perception changes. It becomes more manageable, making it less stressful. So contextualizing is important. The perception of coping ability can also be altered over time. This is why it is important to build up a teenager's confidence and self-esteem. It has to get to a point where it is taken for granted that your teen can achieve great things if she puts her mind to it. This is achieved by focusing on potential and work ethic. When it comes to dealing with your teen, every situation is a teachable moment. Think about how you can make them feel like they have unlimited potential. This is something I believe in wholeheartedly. Every child has unlimited potential. It is limited by conditioning. It is limited by an outdated schooling system. It is limited by low self-esteem. So for example, if your teenager doesn't do well in an exam, instead of making them feel worse, make them feel better. You didn't do great in that exam, but the way your mind works, I know you're very smart. Put your mind to it and we'll do better on the next one. Let's sit down and devise a timetable or system to make sure you're maximizing the potential I know you have. It is important also to give your teenager stories of people who have come from difficult backgrounds to make a success of their lives. When you do this regularly, it fosters a resilient, can-do spirit. The second long-term stress conquering strategy is to identify and combat the stressors. Now, there is a method to do that is very powerful. It involves getting your teenager to ask 3 questions, or even sitting down with them and going through it together. In that regard, it depends on your relationship with your teenager. If you want me to do a video on repairing your relationship with your teenager, then comment below. Anyway, the first question is, what is stressing me out? In a lot of cases, your teenager won't even be aware of all the sources of their stress. Once they think about it, it automatically becomes manageable. It is no longer an invisible enemy, but a visible one. It is important to list all the things that are stressing them out. Once written down, it might even become apparent that some of the stresses aren't even that much of a big deal. But this conclusion is much easier to reach when your teenager sees it written down. The second question is, which of these things can I do something about? There are two zones in which our stresses exist. The zone that is our sphere of influence, and that zone that is beyond this. If the stressor is in our sphere of influence, that means we can do something about it. Getting behind in maths? Something can be done about this. Worried about war in the Middle East? That is probably beyond our sphere of influence. Now, out of all the sources of stress that were written down in question 1, your teen needs to organise them into those that they can do something about and those that they can't. The ones that are beyond the sphere of influence, your teen needs to realise it is pointless to worry about. They must make a conscious effort to move their thoughts away from the things on that list. That brings us to question 3. What actions can I take to do something about the stresses that are in the sphere of influence? This is an empowering question because it gives your teenager agency over their problems. When they have this agency, they have taken back control from the stresses. It also moves thoughts away from, oh, this is an awful situation, to a productive and proactive state of mind. Stress may be uncomfortable, but it does serve a purpose. It helps an individual focus their attention on the things in their life that are keeping them from being happy. It is a feedback mechanism that can be used to improve your teenager's quality of life. The next long-term strategy against stress for your teenager is perhaps the most powerful. Many people are suffering in silence. It can be difficult to reach out, but reaching out ensures people get the help that they need. For a teenager, it is even more difficult to talk about their feelings. These are new emotions and experiences with very little prior preparation or any previous reference points. It is important your teen knows that when they feel overwhelmed by their feelings, that they speak to someone. This can be in the form of one big chat, but then it must be reinforced wherever possible in small ways with teachable moments. If you're watching a movie or reading a newspaper, you can bring up the topic of mental health and stress and use it as a way in to talk about it. Preferably, your teen should understand that they can come to you no matter what, and there will be no judgment, only support and assistance. You have to work towards creating this environment for your teenager. Thank you for watching. I hope this video has been helpful. In the next video, I will talk about short-term strategies your teenager can implement to conquer stress. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment. And most importantly, don't forget to join the revolution in parenting. The link is in the description below. Bye for now.